My name is Tammy Burns. I'm 53 years old. I was a really feisty teenager. Came from a home where my dad was a teacher and my mom was a hairstylist. As I got older, I became more and more willful and ended up being kicked out of the house at the age of 17 and going to live with my grandparents in a different state. Going from very strict to no rules was disastrous for me. It was my senior year of high school, and I was bullied terribly, and my self-esteem was in the toilet, and I was angry, and it was the worst year of my life. Ended up getting married at a really young age to just run away. I was running and not facing the things that I needed to face to fix in me that were already starting to break. By the time I was 32, 33, I'd been married 3 times. Just wanted someone to love me, but I didn't love me. So how could I expect someone else to love me? Ended up with a man that I was with for quite a few years. He abused me terribly. One particular incident was my girlfriends called me up and asked me to go with them out dancing and having drinks, and we were all trying to figure out how are we going to do that. We don't have a car. And I said, I have a car. I had a black sweater dress that I loved that I was forbidden to wear. And I took the car. I wore the dress. I went dancing and drinking and got home at 2 in the morning. Of course, he wasn't there because he was hunting. So the next day I had a ripping hangover. The house was a mess. I was a mess. There was puke in my car. And he came in. I knew that I was in trouble. He proceeded to get angry because of the state of the house. And then he went upstairs and saw the black sweater dress on the floor. And that was the beginning of the worst night of my life. He came down and was furious. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. I could see his eyes begin to change. And when that happened, I knew that I was in trouble. So I dropped to the floor. And he began kicking me with his steel-toed boots in the ribs and the head. And he would pick me up and throw me out the door and tell me that I was trash. And we lived in townhouses, so we had people on both sides. There's no way that they didn't hear what was going on because it was loud. My daughter was screaming. And he continued to pick me up and throw me out the door. I continued to crawl back in on my hands and knees to get back into the kids. He kicked me so hard that I turned within myself. I was no longer conscious. My eyes were open. He came over and realized that he really hurt me. And he kept slapping me across the face because I was catatonic. He slapped me and shook me and slapped me until I came to again. And got me to my feet. Said he was sorry. Helped me up to bed, where I stayed for 3 days because I couldn't get up. Had to call in to my job and tell them I had the flu. I thought I was going to die. It was that day that I decided that I needed to make a plan. I had a really good job, and I saved enough money that I rented an apartment, and I left him. And I'll never forget that first night in my apartment. I slept without fear for the first time in many, many years. This is really a funny thing to say, but I didn't realize that I was in a domestic violence relationship until Oprah told me. I was watching Oprah one day, and they had the 10 signs that you are in a domestic violence relationship. And I kind of sat back and I watched it, and I started to cry because I knew that every day wasn't about violence. I could push his buttons to create this big drama circle so that we could get back to the honeymoon stage. So, you'd get the crap kicked out of you or whatever, and you'd end up with the roses or the flowers or the candy or the whatever the token was that they gave you to show you that they loved you. And then you'd go into this honeymoon stage where it was like the most perfect relationship you ever had. And that's what you coveted. That's what you wanted. I mean, that was the reason that you were there. My story isn't I was a victim and I'm a victor. I mean, I made many, many mistakes. Ended up in a very serious verbally abusive marriage. Lots of cheating, lots of anger, lots of mind games and stalking. And he was reiterating some of the same things that were said in my prior relationship. So I was starting to believe all the negative things about me. Contemplated suicide many times. When I finally left him, it was terrifying because I never knew where he was going to be. He would call me and say, "Oh, I see you changed your hair color. I really like that top." It was terrifying. And a kind man came and said to me one day, "Why do you continue this behavior? Don't you know how beautiful and funny and great you are? Can't you see?" And I said, "No, I can't see." And he said, "Well, I want to show you." So for the last almost 17 years, he's been showing me. I decided that I really wanted to make a difference. I'd had a clothing line years before called No Violence, and it had gone national. But I was still really broken during all of that. So it died very quickly. And I was working for an auto dealer. And this big man came into my office. And we started talking. And he was like a North American continent rep for Joseph Seibel. He was doing what I had wanted to do. I had a dog-eared card in my wallet. And I said, I used to have an apparel line. And I took it out and I gave it to him. And he looked at it and he said, "Oh my gosh, you're her." And he stood up and he slammed his hands on my desk. And he said, "God's not finished with you yet. You need to get up and finish your mission." So he helped me in the beginning break the chain. My husband and I, the last 10 years, have been working on reaching other people with this message that you're more than your past. You are your future. Your opinion of you is more valuable than someone else's opinion of you. And until you learn to love yourself, you can't love anyone else. We've been able to just do so much. We have a racing team with monster trucks and dragsters and all that crazy stuff to reach people where they play. They just believe in the message that you can break the chain. You can break the chain and become who you are, even if you're 53. It's not too late. Lately, we've been doing prison ministry. Being a domestic violence advocate, I've sat in the courtroom and watched as people have been put away for life. And here I am, praying for those same people. For me, a woman's place is having the ability to educate others and to let you know you're not alone. This film is going to allow other people to know they're not alone, that their stories are not about shame, that shame has no place in this, that this is something that happened to them. Each story is individual. Each story is personal. And a woman's place is going to take all of that and make a difference for all of us that have been sitting quietly for so long. There is light at the end of the tunnel.